Welcome to Hot Drama TV.
When Zi and Song Zuer shared the same spotlight, and the internet couldn't look away. At first it seemed like just another luxury fashion appearance. A prestigious Valentino event. A glowing red carpet. Cameras flashing, guests smiling, headlines ready to be written. But when Zi and Song Zuer appeared at the same event, something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, yet unmistakably. Because this wasn't just about fashion. It became a moment about time, beauty, and how audiences see women in the spotlight. One event, two stories unfolding at once. Zi arrived with the quiet confidence of someone who has already weathered the industry's storms. Her presence carried weight. Not just from the Valentino gown she wore, but from years of roles, criticism, reinvention, and endurance. Song Zuer, on the other hand, stepped into the frame with a different kind of energy. Youthful, unforced, almost disarmingly natural. There was no sense of calculation, only freshness, like a face that hadn't yet been shaped by too many expectations. When the cameras captured them together side by side, the contrast was immediate. And the internet noticed. Why the close-up changed everything. What truly ignited the conversation wasn't the outfits, it was the close-up shots. Unfiltered, unpolished, unforgiving. In an era where celebrity images are often smoothed into perfection, these photos felt almost rebellious. Every detail was visible. Skin texture, expressions, micro-emotions frozen in time. For some, Zi represented maturity refined by experience. A beauty built on discipline, presence, and years of standing under scrutiny. For others, Song Zuer embodied youth in its most honest form. Unedited, lively, and still untouched by the full weight of the industry. The conversation quickly moved beyond who looked better. It became about what kind of beauty people recognize, protect, and celebrate. Not a competition, a reflection. Despite the inevitable comparisons, something deeper was happening. Zi was not being overshadowed. Song Zuer was not being elevated at her expense. Instead, the images revealed a truth many prefer to ignore. Beauty does not exist on a single timeline. It evolves. It shifts. It means different things at different stages of life. Zi stood as a reminder that longevity in the industry is not accidental. It is earned through resilience, reinvention, and the ability to remain present, even when trends move on. Song Zuer represented possibility. The open road ahead, the chapter still being written. The freshness that reminds audiences of why they fell in love with stardom in the first place. Together, they told a story no script could write. Why audiences responded so strongly. The reaction online wasn't just gossip. It was personal. Because audiences see themselves in these moments. Some viewers related to Zi, understanding what it means to grow, to change, to be measured against younger versions of oneself. Others found comfort in Song Zuer's natural glow. Remembering a time before pressure and perfection took over. This wasn't about rivalry. It was about recognition. Recognition that women in entertainment are too often forced into narrow definitions. Either eternally youthful or quietly replaced. This moment challenged that idea. Fashion was only the stage. Ironically, Valentino was almost secondary to the conversation that followed. The brand provided the backdrop, but the real focus became authenticity. Not the illusion of perfection, but the courage to be seen as one truly is, whether seasoned or just beginning. In that sense, Zi and Song Zuer didn't just attend a fashion event. They created a mirror. A moment that lingers. Long after the lights dimmed and the headlines moved on, this moment stayed with people. Because it wasn't manufactured. It wasn't scripted. It felt real. Two actresses. Two stages of life. One frame that reminded everyone that beauty is not a race. It's a continuum. And sometimes the most powerful stories are told without a single line of dialogue. What the camera didn't say, but everyone felt. What made this moment linger wasn't the comparison itself. It was the silence between the images. No speeches. No statements. No carefully crafted captions. Just two women standing under the same lights, carrying completely different histories, and letting the camera do the rest. Zi didn't need to prove anything. Her presence already carried the weight of years spent surviving waves of public judgment, box office pressure, and endless reinvention. Every time the industry questioned her relevance, she answered with consistency. Song Zuer, by contrast, carried something more fragile and more dangerous potential. The kind that hasn't yet been tested by time, criticism, or exhaustion. The kind that audiences instinctively protect, even as they project expectations onto it. This contrast wasn't accidental. It was inevitable. The unspoken fear behind the fascination. Why did these images strike such a nerve? Because behind every comment and comparison lies a quiet fear, one rarely spoken out loud. The fear of being replaced. The fear of aging under a public microscope. The fear that value is temporary. Zi's image reminded viewers that longevity is possible, but never easy. That staying visible requires strength, adaptation, and emotional armor. Song Zuer's image reminded them of how fleeting youth can be, how quickly admiration can turn into pressure. Seen together, they revealed both sides of the same truth. Not rivalry relay. This wasn't a passing of the torch. It was a relay race where both runners were still on the track. The industry often frames women as either rising or fading, but reality is far more complex. Careers overlap. Generations coexist. And moments like this expose how artificial those labels really are. Zi is not a symbol of the past. Song Zuer is not merely the future. They are both present. Why authenticity is the new luxury. Perhaps the most surprising takeaway from this viral moment is what it says about audience desire. People no longer crave perfection. They crave recognition. Recognition of pores, lines, expressions, uncertainty. Recognition of growth. Recognition of humanity. The unedited close-ups weren't flaws. They were proof of life. And in a world increasingly filtered, that honesty felt luxurious. The industry is listening quietly. Moments like this don't change systems overnight, but they leave marks. They remind brands, producers, and media outlets that audiences are paying attention, not just to who looks younger, but to who feels real. They challenge the idea that only one kind of beauty can dominate the frame at a time, and they suggest something radical. There is room for more than one story. A frame that became a question. In the end, Zi and Song Zuer didn't spark debate because they stood together. They sparked debate because they forced viewers to ask themselves, what do we value, youth or endurance? Freshness or depth? Possibility or presence? The honest answer? We value all of it. And perhaps that is the quiet power of this moment, not choosing one over the other, but allowing both to exist fully seen. When the spotlight finally softens, and when the lights dim, what remains isn't a verdict. It's a feeling. Zi and Song Zuer walked onto the same stage, under the same camera, at the same moment in time. Yet they carried entirely different stories. One shaped by years of endurance, reinvention, and quiet strength. The other defined by possibility, freshness, and chapters still unwritten. The internet tried to turn that moment into a comparison, but what it truly revealed was something gentler and far more honest. Beauty is not a competition. It's a timeline, and every stage deserves to be seen without apology. In a world obsessed with replacement and ranking, this single frame reminded us that presence matters more than perfection, and authenticity lasts longer than trends. Sometimes the most powerful stories don't need dialogue. They only need the courage to be real. And perhaps that is why this moment stayed with us long after the cameras moved on, because it wasn't asking us to choose. It was asking us to understand.